Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Midas Letter Live. Lots going on in the world of finance. Big news today in Health Canada released some regulations on cannabis edibles, etc. And we have an expert with us. Chad Finkelstein, partner of Dale and Lessman LLP, is joining us. And of course, my friendly co-host Ben's here, Ben Smith, and I'm Ed Milewski. So this news is hot off the press. I'm going to just tell everybody what's going to happen here today on the show, and then we're going to chat to you.
Sounds good.
So edibles regulations, new area, headline news. Ricky will be reading the news. We're going to interview the CEO of Tilt Holdings. Our Brandon Colwell is going to join us. There's market close. RavenQuest BioMed CEO is going to be here, and we'll join James West. He's in California. So Chad, you must be a busy guy.
It's too much too fast. This industry is it's hard to keep up with the volume of changes and the pace of those changes, and today was no exception.
So today a big document came out.
A very big document came out, yeah. I mean, the Cannabis Act came into force on October 17th of this year, and what we've known for most of 2018 was that at some point edibles were going to be regulated. What the announcement had always been was that edibles would be, and when I say refer to edibles, I'm referring to sort of all kinds of ingestibles, food and beverage products. We had known they were going to be...
They're not legal now, right?
They're currently not legal.
And they're not, and that's what they said. They said you can get marijuana, but for a year.
That's right.
So they're monkeying around with all the different legal aspects that they have to figure out, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We had known that the plant, like the flower, seeds, oils, were all going to be legal as of October 17th, and that within a year of the legalization date, we would see edibles be regulated. So now, earlier than expected, Health Canada released their draft regulations just 90 minutes ago on the regulation of those edibles products and topicals and extracts. So while the industry is still poring over those details and trying to figure out what comes next, there's going to be a 3-month consultation period beginning now. Closes February something to get submissions in. I forget the exact date off the top of my head, with a view towards finalizing everything, I think, by the end of the first quarter. The exact legalization date is still not, I believe, known, but with a target of probably the fall of 2019.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, do you extrapolate Health Canada releasing this information? Would you tend to extrapolate that and suggest that perhaps that edibles will be legal by by October 2019? Do you think the timeline is there, that they came out now as opposed to maybe coming out a little bit later and then delaying the edibles date for later in 2019? Yeah,
I do think that. I mean, I can't claim to know what was in the minds of the drafters at Health Canada who came up with these regulations, but I do think that was a big element of it. I mean, the genie's out of the bottle, right? It has been for a very long time, and arguably the federal government kind of missed an opportunity in the first place to have regulated edibles along with all the other cannabis products at the time. I mean, people are looking for ways to, new kinds of ways to consume cannabis, to infuse it into different food and beverage items. They're going to be doing it from their homes. I think that one of the really exciting elements for the industry about edibles in particular was that with all of the news that we've seen about some of the issues with supply shortages and people not necessarily embracing the government sale or private retail sale and still going to their ordinary sources, is that edibles was a bit of an outlier from all of that, right? You can't go to your dealer and buy olive oil or butter or some of the stuff you can do some interesting kind of cooking or beer or wine. So I think that that's been a really strong focus of the industry in terms of what kind of phase 2 is, and especially the success of the retail strategy as that starts to roll out across the country, is being able to have those infused food and beverage items on the shelves. So given that that genie is very much out of the bottle, I do think that there was, I'm just speculating that there was some probably some spirit on behalf of Health Canada to get these regulations in the hands of people sooner, to capture that market in a regulated environment as quickly as possible.
Are you talking to other legal people just in Ontario, or would you be talking to other provincial legal people as well to get what? I mean, I think there's strength in numbers, right? So to go through a major document quickly, you might have a little confabulation and just try to
It's luckily a very collegial industry, right? The cannabis industry,
Yeah.
and so these regulations are really brand new, hot off the press. And what happened this morning is that there was an initial public statement by Health Canada summarizing the key points of the regulations. That was.
And you were
followed.
expecting this? Was this coming out? Were you expecting this today?
There had been widespread speculation that we would see these regulations before Christmas. And I had actually been anticipating it by tomorrow. So the fact that it was today, I think, came as a surprise to many. I count myself among them. And shortly on the heels of the public statement, there was a backgrounder that Health Canada released and sort of a helpful infographic, helpful in the sense that it organized into very accessible columns about what the key points are from the regulations, but left a ton open to interpretation. And then just 60, 90 minutes ago, the actual 145-page document was released. And so we're all still pouring through.
So you probably haven't had a really good chance to even go through it. But is there anything in there that stands out, like that you could talk about that may, oh, this is kind of interesting, we never thought of this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the big takeaways are, number one, that there is a limit on 10 milligrams of THC per standard serving, which was to be expected and is consistent with what states had been doing. Number two is that there's going to be, I think, the same kinds of restrictions on packaging and labeling as there are with respect to cannabis products today. And I don't think there was any real reason to expect differently, but in the states, in Colorado and in Washington, there's a lot more permissiveness in terms of the branding that you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then over the last few months, we've seen stories of kids in Canada and the US who've accidentally ingested gummy bears, and so I don't think there was any real likelihood that we'd see a lot of flexibility or a lot of sort of room for kind of liberal branding on these packaging elements, or sorry, on the packaging of products themselves. So none of that is a surprise to see. What was surprising to see, and I think has caused a bit of an uproar or controversy over the last 60 to 90 minutes, is that there's a line in the regulations which states that you can't have any cannabis edible product which is associated with an alcoholic beverage. And those words are causing a lot of confusion, because I think I've heard from a number of people already who view that as a category killer, right? Especially on the heels of all the announcements we've seen about cannabis companies and beverage companies.
Well, they just, there's a big one in the States today with Tilray.
Tilray announced yesterday with InBev.
Yeah, which is Labatt's, right?
Yeah. And we have Sproutly Canada. We have, of course, HEXO Corp with Molson. So,
right.
Do you? I know it's a little early to extrapolate what's going to happen, but do you think it has the potential to affect, the joint ventures that these companies have announced?
I don't think it's going to be the category killer that on first instance of looking at these regulations, it sort of appears to be, because when you dig a little bit deeper in the regulations and the description of them, what it really says, quite interestingly, is that you can't call your product a name that is associated with alcoholic beverages. So you can't call it beer, you can't call it wine, you can't call it vodka, you can't call it whatever, right? So we now need new words. And this is not new kind of branding terminology. These are new.
So it doesn't kill the category. You just have to reword it.
Right.
It.
Right. So someone's got to develop that quickly and own that quickly, because they will get to own the word that we as an industry start to refer to beverages that share certain properties with other alcoholic beverages, but don't get to be called that. Cannabis infused. Fill in the blank.
Chad, thank you so much for coming by on such short notice, I understand. And we'll probably have you back again if that's okay with you, just to follow what's going on. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Okay.
Great update.
Now we're going to go to Ricky Gerwitz with the rest of the news today. Okay, she's on.
Okay, thanks so much. That was great. I know it's on a short timeline. You're a great speaker, actually.
Thank you.
That's great.
You. No, you're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable frenzy. I've never seen where everything is just so reactive so quickly.
I know.
Okay, you're back. We're back to me.
Yeah.
I'll get out of here.
Okay.
All
right. Well, we'll see you again, I'm sure.
Okay.
You're great
Technical
on the
issues.
So.
Well, that's okay.
Thank you very much.
You know what?
See you guys.
We're going to talk about the markets. So Ben, you've been following markets since 1998 or 1999. We're having this isn't just basically a garden variety correction anymore, I don't think, is it? Is it a little more serious? Is it looking like you got commodity prices falling? Is this something that the market is going to induce problems? Like, it's just the market a market sell-off could cause a recession, right? Like it could affect spending.
Yeah, I think so. You dated me, Ed, so I appreciate that. Watching markets since the late 1990s.
But I didn't say 1899. I didn't say 1899.
You didn't say 1899, so that's good. Viewers may not believe that part. But
now we got to, you know what, got to interrupt you. The news is ready again. We're going to come back. Hold your thoughts.
I'll hold that thought.
Okay, Ricky, back on.
Thanks, and here are the headlines moving markets today. ABInBev and Tilray announced a partnership to research non-alcoholic beverages containing THC and CBD. The partnership is limited to Canada and combines ABInBev's experience in beverages with Tilray's experience with cannabis products. ABInBev's participation will be through its subsidiary, Labatt Breweries of Canada, and Tilray's participation will be through its Canadian adult use cannabis subsidiary, High Park Company. Each company intends to invest up to $50 million US for a total of up to $100 million. RELA Medical Corp, a developer of medtech, and AgraFlora Organics International Inc. are joining forces. They announced the formation of the private company called Glow Life Technologies Limited to pursue medical-related technology for the global cannabis sector. Aphria Inc. announced that its subsidiary, ABPSA, has signed a letter of intent with the Argentinian state-owned Cannabis Avatar Sociedad del Estado. They'll enter into a cooperation agreement regarding cannabis cultivation that will expand the company's Argentinian operations into the province of Jujuy. Under the terms of the agreement, ABP is to establish a facility for the cultivation and processing of cannabis, as well as for the manufacturing of cannabis derivative products, including, but not limited to, cannabis oil. Blisco Cannabis Corp will be widely available in BC. It has signed a supply agreement with the British Columbia Liquor Distribution Branch for non-medical cannabis. Blisco has also received initial purchase orders from the BCLDB for dried flower and pre-rolled products. Xanthic Biopharma Inc., also known as Green Growth Brands, announced that it has been approved to commence trading on the OTCQB venture market beginning today under the symbol GGBXF. And that's your news for today.
Well, thank you, Ricky, for the news. Always a pleasure to watch you give the news. Anyway, we were going to go back and to talk about these markets. They're very volatile. You know, we saw the price of oil drop $30 a barrel in about 2 months. You know, you got interest rates at the 10-year level dropping. You got short-term rates going up. You got the Fed saying, you know, we've got lots of room here. But maybe, you know, give me your take, Ben. You're a student of the market. I know you said the other day when we were talking that, you know, things looked a little, and you were trying to be, I think, maybe you were sort of not being too negative, but you were saying, hey, pay attention here. And I agree. This could escalate, couldn't it? Like it.
Yeah, I mean, of course it could escalate. We have the SPY, the S&P 500 trading below the February volatility lows. If you recall, the volatility situation where you know, VIX spiked up, and a lot of people who are trading you know, volatility assets got wiped out. So there's that. Now, I think on the cannabis news front, the one saving grace is that the NASDAQ 100 index has not traded below the February lows yet, and has made a little bounce off that at around the 150 level on Qs today, and cannabis stocks have followed that. So obviously you can't make a determination on whether it's going to end there. You have to see a retest. You have to see a couple lower highs below that level on longer term charts. But yeah, you know, it's got the potential to be, I mean, there's, you know, to be not good in the near term. To me, it looks like the market could be pricing in a recession, and I've talked about this for a few weeks now. We're, you know, leading on that narrative more than most people,
right?
And I think it's sort of playing out now. But it's not cemented in stone yet. I mean, if you look at the U.S. purchase managers, only about 49% think, and there are people in the know. They can see what's happening with the purchase orders going around to places in America. About 50% believe that there's going to be a recession by the end of 2019, and about 82% believe it's going to be recession by the end of 2020. So it's not in stone yet. And if it isn't, we could also have a nice rally in 2019 in the first quarter.
You know, they talk about an inverted yield curve, right, where the short-term rate is higher than, let's say, the 10-year rate, and that seems to predict a recession, but they don't know if it's going to be in 2 quarters from now, 3 quarters from now, or 2 years from now, right? And this is what.
Yeah, the 2s and 10s are highly watched. It hasn't inverted yet. It's come very close.
It's pretty well flat from here to
It's pretty flat, yeah. The last I checked, it was at 16 basis points, so it looks like it's headed in that direction. So
do you know what the Fed? Like, the Fed's job is to protect the market, right? That's what he wants them to do. But that's, they're not there to worry about the market, and yet everybody's saying they shouldn't have dropped rates because everybody's focused on the market. I mean, the market's really the leading indicator of all leading indicators, as far as I'm concerned.
It is. David Rosenberg came out with an interesting tweet the other day. I liked it on my Twitter, and he noted that even if the Fed stopped raising rates right now, usually at the end of the rate cycle, I mean, I think the damage is already done in terms of historical values of the stock market. When the tightening cycle ends, that's usually it usually signals that maybe a recession is ahead anyway. It doesn't portend good times for the market. So in terms of the 25 basis points raised yesterday, I don't think it's going to help, obviously, the market going forward to raise lending rates some, but I don't think it's going to be the predictor of whether recession happens or not. It's just not obviously friendly in a fiscal stimulative matter.
We're gonna come back to this but we have to go to a Skype interview with Alexander Coleman, who's the CEO of Tilt Holdings, and Tilt, I believe, is a newly listed cannabis company. So let's. There's Alexander now. How you doing? Can you hear me okay? I don't think I can hear you.
There we go.
I can now.
There we go.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Where are you calling from, Alexander? Can I call you Alex?
Right now, Alex is great. Right now, we're in Florida.
Okay, good. So what's the value proposition for Tilt? Tell us about Tilt.
Sure. So Tilt is an infrastructure and technology company focused on the cannabis market. We started the company with a mind of diversification, both of revenue and sources of business, and kind of creating an actual spread for our investors. So on one hand, like many other companies, we're an MSO, a multi-state operator. Not sure where that term came from, but we'll live with it. We're in 7 states today. We have vertical operations. We manufacture, process, package, distribute our products. But we also have a very big technology platform which today enables businesses to connect with consumers. It enables products to move from business to business to business to consumers. We're working on a solution for manufacturers to be a little bit smarter. And so we've taken a very broad approach to this market, which is growing faster than anybody would have anticipated.
And you say you operate in 7 states?
Yeah, correct.
And are you actually, so it's an infrastructure and technology company. Is there, what does that basically say, that you're not involved with the actual marijuana itself? Is that what that means?
Oh, we're absolutely involved. Oh, we're absolutely involved in marijuana. I think the industry is in the middle of the first inning in a lot of respects. And we do touch the plant, as people refer to it. Both here in Canada and now in Europe. We just signed a deal with a group in Macedonia. So we have a team of scientists who do a lot of research for us, creating new form factors. But at the end of the day, we don't really focus on retail, and maybe that's the biggest distinguishing part of our business. While we do own some stores, we're really a store supporting model, whether it's our consumer packaged goods, consumer devices. We have both in our house. and then we have a broad suite of services to help those businesses do what they're doing better. And that's how we've organized the company.
Alex, how much money did you raise on this IPO round?
We raised about $130 million. We've raised about 250 so far, and I would say we have about 120 million of cash on our balance sheet today.
Wow. Wow. And how many shares outstanding?
Pre-M&A, about 330 million today.
330 million. And you're
right.
trading, I see today, you're trading around $2.35. Does that sound about right?
You know, yeah, it is. On Tuesday, we had our first research report written by Canaccord, who was our lead banker. They have a target price of $6, and they're basing that off a suggested 2019 performance of about 460 million of total revenue and just about $150 million of EBITDA, which gives us about a 33% EBITDA margin.
Do you think those estimates are rather aggressive, or do you think you're on track to, from everything you see, to meet those numbers?
I think we are very well positioned to capitalize on growth in 2019 the way we've laid it out. And don't forget, in that number, about 2/3 comes from the sale of cannabis products. One of our starting states is Massachusetts, so we have a tremendous presence there. And then the other third is in consumer devices like pens, and also in software and services. So as I said, you know, we've got a very impressive actual spread. What we've done in Tilt is really a holding company. We've gone out and bought market-leading companies, whether they're in a single state and have measurable market share, or they've figured out how to dominate the market that they're in across every state, like a pen company, like a distributor, like a SaaS platform. It's all in our company now.
Alex, prior to going public, which has only been about, looks like about 4 weeks ago, you were private, obviously. And how long were you private? How long were you guys private and doing what you're doing? In other words,
well,
how old's the company?
So the starting point for our company was early 2016, but a lot of companies in our portfolio started as far ago as 2014 or 13. So it really depends on which company we're focused on. All now inside Tilt and operate as a Tilt company. So the starting point goes back a little further than that, but I would say the foundation of the company was early 2016.
Right.
Now, Alex, is the macro environment in cannabis right now, obviously it's taken a little bit of a downturn since Canadian legalization on October 17th. Has that affected anything that you're doing right now, or impacted any of your operations in any way, or is it just, you know, you're trying to execute on your business plan, full steam ahead, and everything will take care of itself?
We're absolutely keeping our head down and trying to build a great cannabis company, irrespective of the capital markets. Obviously, those will impact the valuations of the target companies we're looking at, or possibly our access to large quantums of capital that we think we need to build a company. But at the moment, we're uncorrelated and uncoupled from what's going on in the macro. I mean, the industry is so new. If you look at the United States alone, you know, the average consumer, or I should say the average resident, due to interstate restrictions in Colorado, they were spending about $288 a person as early as the first quarter of this year. If you extrapolate that across the country, you're looking at a $100 billion annual market. And we only had 9 last year showing up. So, you know, we're $90 billion away from new revenue to get to that number. And, you know, our company, along with only a few other companies, are really the best positioned to capture most of that new revenue coming online.
Great.
Alex, you're obviously well funded. You've obviously had time to put your company together. Looks like you're executing. Wish you all the best. We're going to leave it there, and hope we can invite you back and maybe a quarter, and you can update us. How's that?
I'd appreciate the invitation. Absolutely.
Great.
All right. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, that looks like they got some vision, and they're executing, and you know, nice to have a nice amount of cash on.
Yeah, it looks good. I think that's the thing that surprised me most. Not knowing the company intricately is the amount of cash that they had on hand. It seemed like they were fully funded.
And it hasn't, like, it's basically, I put up a chart, and it's basically right around where it was when it came out. So, you know, might be one to pay attention. I'm going to watch this one closely.
Yeah, it definitely, I would say in general, the companies with the highest cash burn that have to raise or closest to having to raise are the ones taking the brunt of some of the impact here. So I would say that it's a big advantage in Tilt's favor if they don't have to go to market anytime soon, if they can fund their operations for a while and get through some of the storm here. It's definitely a net plus.
Yeah, I think he said that they raised about $250 million altogether, and they have about 120. And this is obviously when they were private, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
I'm gonna do some work on this one, I think, and on the $2 stock, you're not paying $38 or whatever. Anyway, so we got to get back to the markets. I want to just put up the S&P here, just get a sense of. You know what? I'll put it on. Oh yeah, I guess nobody's listening to me here. That's all right. All right.
So the markets, nice little bounce in the market.
We all set here? Really? Is it coming through now?
So yeah, I don't know what you're looking at, but I'm looking at the QQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100 index. Before coming to the studio today, I wrote an article saying that this is what I was looking at in terms of a bounce to see, because I use the Qs as a proxy for how MJ is going to do it in terms of a broad market factor. And right off 250, right off the February lows, even though the S&P has broken that decisively, the Qs have bounced off that. So we're going to look to see whether this number retests, and successfully creates some new higher lows in the coming days.
What I like about today's candle is that it's got a long wick, a long tail, which there's some indecision there. It is still red, but now the body of the candle is into the low end of yesterday. So it went into the abyss and it's come back out, so to speak. So it's looking relatively a bit constructive in my humble estimation for a bit of a rally. I don't know if that rally will
hold.
Well, in other words, is it a dead cat, a bit of a bounce? Anything we get to soften the dramatic, erosion of wealth, I'll take.
Yeah, I think all investors are going to take it at this point. I mean, it's been quite a move lower. We're talking like over the last 3 months, 15% on the S&P, 15% on the Qs, a little over 10% on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So we're talking about significant erosion here, and I think before you can move higher, you need to stop the bleeding. So the first thing to do right now is to, like I said in my article today, is let's look at what happens on the NASDAQ market, which is the best proxy for MJ stocks in the U.S., even in Canada to a certain extent, and let's see if we get that bounce there, and see if we can build some, have some positive base building, and then maybe, who knows, maybe we can be surprised in the first quarter next year.
We got a question for you, Ben, from ZG. Ben,
what's up here?
Question for you. In the midst of this cannabis market shakeoff, why do you think Khiron is up in the last 3 sessions? Besides the fact you guys and Chris DePrawa were on this week. That's specifically about Khiron, and I noticed it's acting reasonably well. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Z. And I would say that if you're looking to get in or to build a position at these lows, or if you already have a position, that these outperformance, this relative outperformance where the market is going down precipitously and the stocks are not reacting to that, Khiron being one of the few that are not, really getting debased on this move lower, is a really positive sign. Obviously, Chris was on the show, and exposure on Midas Letter, we have a pretty good following, is always helpful. But a lot of what they're doing, I think a lot of it, in my opinion, it's a small part of it, would be the cash burn situation. And when Chris was here on his last interview, he mentioned that a lot of their employees are from LATAM. So they're hiring a lot of people from Mexico and from Colombia. and Chile.
Yeah.
So they don't have the cash burn rate. I'm not sure what the cash position is. I'd have to look at that, but they don't have the cash burn rate as some of these other juniors, and that's going to be helpful. Because if you can fund your operations and not have to go to market at very depressed levels, that's a huge advantage. We saw that with Tilt on that interview. So that's one thing that they probably have going for them. And also, Latin America, that's a great market, and they're at the forefront of that. And there's not too many like LATAM-focused companies in there. That's why Khiron's one of my favorite junior names, to be honest.
And the fact that Vicente Fox is on the board, ex-president of Mexico, and Mexico is now going in the direction they're going, you can't help but think that they have they're at the front of the line when a door opens, right? Like
100%.
Yeah,
and I've written about that several times.
Yeah, no.
And in the Canaccord note, when they...
I know Darren Collins, who's I believe the CFO, and I think these guys are, the valuation was never nuts. They're not being, they're not at the trough, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, from a market cap basis, what are they fully diluted? They're 120 million, something like that.
I don't even know if it's
100 million.
Yeah,
I don't know, somewhere around there. So it's not you're not talking about a Goliath. I mean, there's a lot of room to move, I would think, if they execute on their business plan, and the market's potential is huge. And Vicente Fox, if you've been listening to Midas Letter, or even the Canaccord note when they came out and upped their price target to, I think, $3 speculative, they mentioned Vicente Fox about 27 times in there. I know I controlled F'd it just to see how many times, how important they thought Vicente Fox was, and it was in there 27 times in that note.
They had him on so many times that we don't say Vincent, we say Vicente.
We say Vicente, exactly.
Anyway, so big news with Tilray today, right? Like that was monster news. So InBev is the biggest beer maker conglomerate in the world, isn't it?
I believe so.
I believe so. And I think the three main components all have to put up $50 million to each to be partnered in this go forward to explore beverages that are infused with THC. And CBD.
Very good news, of course. And with the Health Canada regulations coming aboard that we just heard from Dale, I believe his name was.
Chad.
Sorry, Chad.
Yeah, Chad.
Yeah. So I mean, if that timeline is on pace, it's conceivable that they could have some sort of commercial beverage out in the fourth quarter of 2019. One would think. It's great. Yeah, it's a great partnership. It's great for the space. I don't think the space needs any more validation in terms of CPG partners. I think we all know that it's coming and it's already here. But great news for the sector in general.
Yeah, the stock's up $79, and James and I were talking about how oversold Tilray looked when it was in the low 70s, and then the next day it went into the mid to high 60s. And I like buying stocks that are through the Bollingers and looking like almost an exponential move. And we were kidding. I said, well, as it turns out, you had 2 days to buy it, and you could have made basically 10% on your money. And regardless of the reason, when they're oversold, maybe it makes management scramble to come up with some good news.
That's a tough one, though, because you never know, right? We've seen some of these ones get oversold and not come back. And, of course, Tilray has the $100 million plus lockout coming in the in January. So there's that to watch out for. But it was definitely one of the most oversold names out there.
And they seem to be doing deals with some pretty big names. Like this seems to be a company that gets people's attention, right? You can be a small marijuana company and call up some of these pharmaceutical companies. They're not going to return your call, but they put a couple deals together now. Are quite impressive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I noticed that the 10-year rate has gone up a bit today. So, it's not like the world's falling apart. I think if you saw the 10-year rate move up a bit, that might give some people some confidence. Like we really don't want to see rates at that 10-year level drop too quickly, because then you're thinking, like, what's going on? Like, people are loading up on treasury bonds because they're scared of everything else, and that's not happening. So that's a good thing.
Yep. So far the curve hasn't inverted. So
so the Dow, I'm just looking here. I want to only down 384. I say only because I saw it with a 6 handle very briefly. So that's almost cut in half. You know what? I like to see this. I like to see any kind of move from the lows. I like to see a nice big tail on this candle. Oh, we got another question for you, Ben. Your thoughts on Altrius and Chronos, and a possible acquisition of the low-cost hemp, Jewel, okay, and a possible acquisition of low-cost hemp and MJ producing companies, since it will all be in extracts. That's from 30 mil.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, obviously a positive for the industry, but I would say that, and the specific companies involved, I would say that it's especially a positive since Altria came and did these deals, right? Especially that big Jewel deal. I believe that was 12 million. I'm not sure. 12 billion. Sorry, I'm not. I have to refresh on that. I was focusing elsewhere today, but either way, with both those two deals, they actually took a 2-notch downgrade to their credit status. So the firm obviously knew, Altria obviously knew that this would create some sort of near-term financial pressures in the next 3 or 4 years or whatever on their corporate bonds and stuff like that, and still chose to go ahead with these deals. So it shows you not only that the big CPG companies are going mainstream with marijuana. We already knew that, right? But now these big companies are actually taking credit down rates, 2 notches to their credit rating to get into these deals. So that's pretty significant. Their borrowing costs are going to go higher, and it's going to create more pressure on their balance sheet short term. So they're still doing it anyway and still getting these deals. That is a good news.
Okay. Now I understand we're going to be talking to Brandon Colwell shortly. He's calling in? Okay. Now, is my NDI working yet? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Altria's credit round rate cut 2 notches at S&P as a result of Jewel Chronos investments. So they're still going ahead. They knew that this was probably going to happen. So I mean, that's big. I think that's the big takeaway here, and that's a sort of a narrative I haven't really
So this
heard.
is the major tobacco company that their credit rating has been cut a couple notches. And so, wow, that's...
And they're still going ahead.
That's significant. That's interesting.
They'll be fine, but they're going ahead and they're taking higher borrowing costs, and they're paying more debt and all this kind of thing.
So we got a familiar face coming on the screen here shortly. Brandon Colwell of Follow the Money Investor Group. He's going to join us. Let's say hello. There he is, the man, the legend.
Brandon, how are you?
Are you calling from Brandon, Manitoba? Just kidding.
No, I'm calling from Huntsville, Muskoka, actually.
What are you doing in cottage country this time of year, Brandon? You just closing down your cottage for the season?
Yeah, no, I've got family up here, and it's a chance to just get away from the city for a while. Thankfully, the markets can pull me here, so I can still follow everything as we're going. There's no location needed.
Obviously, your cottage has got heat in it, and it's probably insulated. Just kidding.
Very, very much so. Yeah. So how's the day been going so far?
Well, I was just saying to Ben how the Dow was down 600 at one point. Now it's down about 370. That to me is significant. I think that could I think that could cause a rally for a day or two, and give everybody a breath of fresh air, because it's been brutal. Like if you look at whatever you want to look at. Look at the S&P, look at the Dow, look at the NASDAQ. They've really come off here. Like,
what is your take, Brandon?
Well, it's interesting. If you guys look at it, right at 2 o'clock, it made the change, and it's the exact opposite as yesterday. It was rallying up until 2 o'clock, and then the Dow, the S&P 500, everything, the NASDAQ, just absolutely went off a cliff. obviously when the Fed announced the rate hike. And today we were giving ground, like you said, down almost 600 points. And then all of a sudden, right at 2 o'clock again, it bounced. So, it's really interesting. I've been trying to figure out what might have caused that. If there was, maybe people realized they overreacted and sold off too much from that rate hike that we already knew for the most part was coming. But yeah, right at the exact point it started firing. So, it's still worrisome because it's not holding it. Like it's so volatile. We're seeing swings of like 400, 500, 600 points each day. I'll go with you, Ed. You've been around a few cycles, so if you got a good feeling, I like it. But right now, I'm still really iffy on everything.
Yeah, the trend is your friend, right? You cannot, go all in because you think you have been, somebody's taken an electric bolt and shot you with some wisdom, and all of a sudden you found the bottom. I don't think that's the approach here. You gotta be very careful because, these things, because there's levered people that are levered, and there's margin calls, and margin calls create selling, and selling creates more selling, and it gets a little. It's a domino effect, isn't it? Like.
Yeah.
So.
And what's interesting too, we're always talking about social media and always watching these things. It is interesting to see, say, the effect of yesterday. So I was talking to somebody about how social media and the news, although it's always been that way, you've always been in papers and you'll talk about the market, whatever it is, but how instantaneously you can find out information right now. I honestly think in recent years, and especially prevalent this year, I think that's having a really, like a ripple effect on retail investors, where your institutional investors, they'll buy and they'll sell off of certain things, like whether the Fed is dovish or hawkish, whether they're doing rate cuts or whatever it be. But it's almost as if we're getting that initial institution sell-off or buying, and then through social media, Twitter, through different stock rooms or whatever it be, Facebook, then the retailers start hearing this and they either start getting FOMO or they start freaking out. And I think it's almost like it's adding a second ripple to the effect of whatever people are reacting to. So it's been really, really interesting seeing that. And right now, you'll see everyone, they're talking about the Fed raise, and they're talking about, we start seeing people talk about gold, obviously, because if we're starting to really have an effect on the markets, gold is usually favorable during those times, which I hope so as well. I'm in a few gold exploration companies myself. But it's just interesting, that narrative, that I really do think we're entering a new era of investing where social media and the way and how instant news is having such a larger effect one way and then the other. What do you guys think?
I think that's a very good point. At the tops of markets, people are greedy. At the bottoms of markets, people are fearful. Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful.
I think you're right, Brandon, too, because I know for a fact that there are some firms that sell data to institutions, and they basically, one of the things that they do is they gather all this information from social media and try to create a sentiment gauge, if you want to call it that, right? And they sort of use that into some of their algorithmic selling and buying programs, right? It's like it's one factor, one component. So I don't think there's any question that what you're hearing off social media is being echoed and amplified to a certain degree, and it's actually going into these programs specifically. That I know is going on. So for sure. Now, how much so, I don't know specifically, but yeah, we're definitely seeing. The herd seems to be running one way or the other. It seems to be amplified to a certain effect, to a certain degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that exact note, actually, so in our chat rooms, we have Discord chat rooms that we've got cannabis rooms, energy and mining, blockchain technology that people can converse and run ideas off one another. But there's also bots that you can pay for and set up. And one of the bots that we have there is the fear sentiment. And it gives you a ratio of, are people bullish or are they bearish? Is there fear or is there FOMO? And it was actually like 90% fear from that rating, and that's through the U.S. markets. That's where that bot calculates that through. So it was interesting to see that, and yeah, just like you said, when you've got this herd mentality, especially there's a lot of people who have been brought into investing for the first time in this last year. You just talk to your friends, you talk to people, your coworkers.
Yeah.
People are telling you they've never invested before, but hey, they've got these 5 or 4 amazing pot stocks, and it's funny how that really pulled them in. But those are the uneducated people, or not uneducated, that's the wrong wording, but when it comes to investing,
lack of sophistication, maybe. Like,
yes, exactly. They're still learning the ropes, and they allow emotion to be one of the main factors of whether they're buying or selling something. So what should have been just a little bit of a sell-off now turns into all-out panic as well. So you know what? We still got a little bit more in December left, but we're getting real close to Santa Claus coming. So I'm not too sure what the last of the year is going to do.
I don't know about you guys, but I've been sort of looking today, and I noticed the marijuana stocks look like they're not really getting pounded. And I just found out that maybe the reason is because President Trump signed the Farm Bill into law today. So
yeah, I'm going to say that's coincidental because that news is so known. And 3 weeks ago when it came out and they came to an agreement, the stocks didn't rally. CWeb and a few other CBD extractors did. Market didn't really rally. It passed through Congress. Market didn't really rally. And now it's on Trump's desk and he did it. I guess the fact that he didn't screw that up is
well. I mean,
is,
I look at Kronos is up a bit. Tilray's having a great day, and I just looking at the screen. Khiron's up. A few of them are down like 20 cents or 10, but nothing up big, except maybe Tilray but we'll take whatever we can get, right? I don't like to see, these 2-3% drops in all sectors. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting though. I'm right with you there, Ben. I don't think it should be making a difference, but if you look at GGB, if you look at CWeb, although they're not too much, they're like 5%. I saw what was up as well. Hemp was up a little bit. They are green for the most part when they're in the American hemp and CBD market. So it's having a little bit of effect, but I agree with you. It shouldn't, because we already knew this was happening. It was announced yesterday that it was going to get signed in. I think they said 2:30, but it was going a little bit late, so it must have just happened, which is great to see. But if you guys were watching Twitter, a lot of people came out right away and said, yes, it passed, but it went through the Senate, then it went through the House, but before it got to the president, it was in a committee. And that committee actually took away a certain aspect of it, where now each individual state has to decide whether they're going to go through this or not. So you've made legalization 2.0 again, where it's not going to be wide open for all 52 states. It'll be legal federally, but each individual state has to have their own either legislation or whatever that process is to say, yes, we're going to allow that. So, it is a win, but it could have been a lot better. So I think that's what really held some of these stocks back as well from really going on a rip here, because there's still more hurdles to go. And that was, that's not well known. Not many people I find are talking about that, except those really, in the know Twitter influencers who are also, a part of a news agency or the government itself. And that's where it's coming from. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Okay.
Good update. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Brandon. Always a pleasure. Hope you enjoy your holidays.
Happy holidays, Brandon.
Absolutely. Well, they haven't started yet. Just a different location. That's all. But a couple of days away.
Are you sipping a cold one? That's what I want to know.
No, a hot one. Actually, I had coffee on my way up here. I just got here 2 minutes before we went live.
Maybe a little tequila in that coffee. Anyway, not going to suggest anything. Okay, well, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Anyway, I mean, we're going to have an interview with James here shortly, but I'm got to tell you, I'm really interested in what this Standard & Poor's is doing. Yeah, well, down 43 points. Yeah, I think maybe it's turned back down to the downside a bit.
Yep, there's no question it's weak. No question it's weak. I'm just looking for some base building here. Again, if we're focusing on weed stocks investors, which we tend to do at Midas Letter, 150 on the QQQs. Let's see if it can hold the February lows. If they can and get some base building here, then hopefully, finally, I'll be able to write that positive technical piece I've been wanting to write for the last few weeks, where I can say, it might make a good technical trade here, a good, nice swing trade, but it is definitely too early to do that. But it's something we're watching because we did get a solid bounce off 150. So.
Right. Well, yeah. So now the Dow is now down. I wish. Okay, down to 551 points.
Yep, another wave of selling there came in.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get these waves. This is going to happen a lot now, isn't it? Like,
yep.
The swings are.
Macro, quite simply, what's happening in the market is trumping what's happening in the macro environment in the cannabis sector. And I've been, saying this all over Twitter, in my writings, that it's crazy because a few months ago, when we were in a better environment, all these macro catalysts, even one of them that we've seen, South Korea legalizing medical cannabis unexpectedly, the Philippines, 105 million people. One of those events would have set the market up 10, 12% on the day. Right. It would have sent up, a 3-day rally or whatnot. But now, none of that matters. None of that matters. Even the Farm Bill,
right?
Huge for CBD extractors, absolutely huge. CWEB was about where it started when the passage came out, 3 weeks ago when they came to the conclusion. So, I don't know. I mean, it's. Right now it's all about the market right now, and it's trumping all these macro catalysts. Because actually, when you look at it, there hasn't actually been a time where I've seen so many macro catalysts all line up in wheat stock's favor, globally, right? It's actually all starting to unfold. It's all starting to gather steam,
right.
But yet it's all being suppressed by what's happening in the market right now.
Right. Okay, we're gonna hear from James West. James West interviewed George Robinson earlier. George is the CEO of RavenQuest Bio, and here is that interview.
George, how are you doing? Welcome back.
Awesome, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back, James.
Yeah, you bet. So RavenQuest, you've just announced quite the significant supply agreement with Wayland Group. Tell me about that, how that all came about, and what's the positive for Wayland Group? What's the positive from RavenQuest shareholders?
I think what's happened here is people starting to realize that our developed technology, our approach to business, obviously our B2B sales license, the opportunity to be a part of our company and our product offering really created some interest in several LPs, but really created a sort of a 1 + 1 = 5 for us and for Wayland Group, was that we already had a good relationship with each other. We had been talking about other opportunities in the past. But what it really does for us is it provides our company with certainty that we have a revenue stream for 2019. But more importantly, we were part of a process that allows Wayland to reach out and get product to market, which they need so badly and the Canadian market needs so badly.
Right. Okay. So great. So you're now RavenQuest business model. The last time we spoke, you were in the business of helping First Nations become LPs. Is that still the source of this cannabis for the Wayland Group? Is it an Aboriginal First Nations group, or is it some other source?
This source is actually from our two facilities that we have. Our facility that's in Markham, Ontario, and our facility that's in Edmonton. But our Aboriginal or First Nations or Indigenous people group is still moving forward rapidly, lots of conversations. What we're hearing a lot in the Indigenous space is these communities are starting to move to writing their own Cannabis Act. So a slight little bit of concern when they go through that, but all of our projects in those space are moving forward in a positive manner.
Interesting. So when you say that First Nations groups are writing their own cannabis legislation, does that suggest that on First Nations territory they don't recognize the Cannabis Act?
No, it's not that they don't recognize the Cannabis Act. What they're suggesting is that if they write their own Cannabis Act on their sovereign land, that potentially they can control all of the taxation, all of the sovereignty of the product, and move the product as they see and wish to within Canada from nation to nation, maybe more importantly from Indigenous community to Indigenous community on a worldwide basis.
Aha, okay, well that makes perfect sense. Why give the taxes to the government up in Ottawa when you can keep it in the government on your own land? I like that. Sometimes I wish I was born First Nations, but so that's great. Well then, so tell me about your operations in Markham and Edmonton, or what sort of footprint have you got, and what's sort of the operational strategy there?
Okay, so in Markham, Ontario, we're 20,000 square feet. We're flat table, but we will be converting those over to our orbital gardening strategy probably in the middle of next year. But our facility in Edmonton is 35,500 square feet with 336 orbital gardens in place through 2019. We currently have 142 gardens ready to start cultivating. So it's a footprint, but this footprint will create about 11,000 kilograms. So going back to our last discussion, the smallest footprint with the highest output in yield, the lowest cost of power consumed, 70% less water consumed, and more importantly, 90% less nutrients. So it's a really attractive business model on our side as far as cost. But more importantly, it has an environmental and sustainability plan, which many organizations love to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Tell me about these orbital gardens.
Well, the last time we talked, it was a real cool strategy in where the actual plants rotate around a light down the center of a tube. So imagine a drum with a light down the tube, and then the plants orbiting or going around that garden. What it does is the plants naturally stunt. So they grow to about 14 or 16 inches tall. But since the plants are so close to the light source, we get a max amount of yield from 2,400 watts of power. Normally, that same yield would come from about 8 to 10,000 watts of power. That's largely due to how closely the plants are to the light source. But since they're so short, one, they don't use as much water. And any water that they don't use, we recollect and we put nutrients back into it and re-pH the water. But more importantly, since they're so short, what it allows us to do is feed them less because they don't need as much nutrient through some of the plant leaf and some of the plant material that is essentially just thrown out. So imagine a 4-foot plant versus a 14-inch plant. How much nutrient does it really take to get up to the bud? Well, it's very small because it only has to go up a 14-inch stalk and set itself into the bud structure.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating, George. We're going to have to send a camera crew out to see these orbital gardens.
I hope you will. I think it's going to be really cool for everyone to see.
Yeah, great. Okay. So apart from this excellent Wayland Group deal, what other big things are going to happen in 2019 for Raven's Quest?
You know, I think we've got a lot of very interesting things that we're looking at right now. You know, since we have this out of the way for ourselves, we can start focusing on some other things that we've had in our tactical plan, such as how do we move on formulation development or even buying formulation technology so that we're ready for October 2019 or maybe sooner when derived products are going to be allowed under the new Health Canada Cannabis Act. I think more importantly, we can start taking a look at what we have already developed and working on today, which is our craft cannabis groups that we want to start working with and be a part of their success. And lastly, we still have a lot of, let's call it applicants that are coming to us to really look at what is the best way to move forward. So on our consulting and management services side, we're starting to get a lot of traction with people saying, your technology is interesting, your approach to business is interesting, how can we be a part of RavenQuest and how can you be a part of us? So I think that's the 2019 is continuing to build out the cultivation model, continue to build out the model on formulation, and making sure that we have enough products, not only in dried cannabis, but in derived products, whether that be vape pens, beverages, or whatnot. We have a plan going forward. So we're working on that in 2019, and hopefully very soon we can make some announcements in those areas.
Sounds great, George. Well, I'm going to look forward to spending more time looking at Raven's Quest and coming out with a cameraman, so we'll keep that conversation going. When do you think would be a good time for us to come out there?
I'm hoping that you can come out January.
Okay.
I think that by that time we'll have the license in place, and we're having big events on there January 15th and 16th with a bunch of other stakeholders that are coming out to just take a look at the facility. And it would be great that if the cannabis is rotating around there, to have you and your team there.
We'd love to be there. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks again for having me. It's been wonderful again.
You bet, George. Bye for now.
You know, we're just not filming here in the studio. The Midas team has been on the road a lot this year. Here's a look back at, and that's all it says. Back at what? Just kidding. Yeah, you know what? The market's closed now. It's been closed for 35. What did the Dow? Did we get a number on the Dow here? I want to just.
Yeah, it's about
down. Well, 470. Okay, that's not bad. That's bad. I like to see movement from the other direction. You know, I don't like to see it. I don't think it really matters, but.
Yeah, it's a little too early. Yeah, I mean, it finished right near the lows, near the bottom quartile easily. So I don't see anything, particularly constructive in this. But it's all about base building now, right? It's all about testing the lows. It's all about see if we can get some higher lows going on. What happens on close, whether it finishes 50 points more, less, or more than is sort of immaterial. I don't know, at least in my opinion. So we'll know the answer in a few days once we.
I hearken back to the .com days, and I was a lot younger, as we all were, and basically for 2 or 3 years, I think it was about 3 years. The NASDAQ just went down, but it did have these wild upward moves when the Fed would cut interest rates like dramatically to get things going, and things would open up so much. And if you were short, and that's all I did back then was short stocks, and you can it's still hard to make money if you shorted too much of something, and you just get a little move the other way, and you get scared and cover, thinking that you're at the bottom. But it went on for a while, right? It was brutal. It was brutal.
It went on for a long time, yeah.
Yeah, that was probably. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have the same kind of write-off or same kind of meltdown as we did. Like the 2007-8 one was unbelievably wicked, right?
It was really bad. I don't know if anybody really knows how it's going to play out. All I know is that there's a couple factors that are kind of worrying if you're looking at like a more of a long-term macro perspective.
Right.
And one of it is the Fed balance sheet. So at the end of, as part of the TARP program to end the housing crisis 2008, the Fed raised its balance sheet over 5 times, from 800 billion to 4 trillion, something like that. So it raised its balance sheet almost 6 times.
To provide liquidity, basically.
Right, to bail out the banks, provide liquidity. Right. They issue their own bonds, purchase their own bonds, reinvest the interest proceeds and all that. That created a tremendous amount of liquidity for the primary banks in the Federal Reserve, which they would redeposit those funds and purchase stocks because they yield a lot more than bonds during the economic expansion. So,
So the corollary or the opposite of that is taking place, right? They're reducing their balance sheet.
The opposite of that is taking place, and
so do you know how that exactly works? Like, well, I have an accounting background, but I don't know. I listened to the Fed guy talk about he used a specific word about something to do with the balance sheet, like sloughing it. I don't know. I can't remember the word he used, but he gave some kind of talk, and so there's less liquidity in the system.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist by trade. But I follow.
You certainly sound like one.
Well, thanks, Ed. I appreciate it. I'm sure other people can talk a lot more.
Ben for Fed. Oh, Ben Bernanke. Ben Bernanke.
Ben Bernanke. There you
What's
go.
the difference? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm quite at that level yet, but I know the basics of it, and I know the Fed at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of 2018. Said that they weren't going to purchase bonds anymore, and they were going to let some of their bonds that they purchased retire, right, and not reinvest the proceeds back into the bond market. So basically, some of these bonds are retiring right now, and proceeds aren't being reinvested, and that's causing the monies to supply to drain essentially. So it's like picture a QE and the stimulative effect it had in the market, where liquidity was being added to the market. Primary dealers are getting all this much money, and they're reinvesting those proceeds back into the stock market where there are higher yields and economic expansion. Basically, the opposite of that is happening. That the Fed is trying to tighten so that they have ammunition for, to soften when the next recession comes, and they can throw more money at it. So they have to reduce their balance sheet basically and sort of drain some of the liquidity out of the system. So they're trying to do it to make it to essentially to get a soft landing to occur. And that's a very tricky business because the Fed balance sheet has never been this high. I mean, they raised it 6 times off the previous high. So whether they can initiate a soft landing is
just listening to you, I think well, while they're doing this, maybe they've misjudged how fast this the opposite of creating liquidity. Like we've had a hell of a correction here. When you start looking at just the sheer slope of this descent, and we broke down a few days ago, and I thought we were going to hold, and I put up the chart now, but I guess we're having technical difficulties. I mean, they may create a hard landing if they're not careful, right? Is that possible? Maybe they're going to have to start fattening up the balance sheet again.
Well, if looking at things, I'm sure that's definitely an option on the table. China, we're going very macro level here, but China won't have, I don't think, the same ability to backstop the world economy like they did in 2008, and that's one of the issues here if you're looking at where the global economy goes. Because in 2008, China was still growing at 8% or 10% or whatever it was, and they still had proceeds to invest in everything. They basically bought up the commodity complex. Yeah. So building high rises that no one uses, and 50 million homes that aren't occupied.
Like towns there's towns out there that nobody lives in.
There's nobody there. It's built for 3 million people that 100,000 people live in. So they built all this stuff, and they basically bought up all the commodity complex, and that helped the world economy recover. Now it's I'm not sure who's going to backstop at this time, but we shall see. I don't know. This is more long-term macro stuff, but hopefully in the first quarter of 2019, we're going to get a good bounce. Yeah, and the fact that the oil fell off a cliff here, because I watch oil only because I'm more from the I'm an old guy, sort of it throwback.
Anyway. Oil, when it was $75, and I thought, look at this, oil's at 75, they're talking about it going to 100. And here it is at $46. That's horrendous. That's whoa. Yeah, old school or not, oil is definitely still relevant. And the huge $30 decline over the last, 2-3 months is definitely a little bit foreboding, in my opinion, about where the economic growth is going to go in the next few quarters. So it's still very relevant as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or whatever. Yeah. And the other thing that is gold. I mean, gold in the last the last few days. Gold too. Yeah. Gold had look at that candle there. You can't put it on there, but we're going to get this fixed here for tomorrow. So everybody that's viewing today, come back tomorrow and I'll get these charts working. Yeah, we had a terrible looking candle yesterday, and today we got a great looking candle. Although it does, look like it's got a wick and a tail about the same size. I think they call that a doji. A lot of indecision. Sort of, the body is in the middle. Anyway, we're gonna leave it there, and we got a feature here for you. We're not just filming here in the studio. The Midas team has been on the road a lot this year. Here's a look back.
This is the home of Midas Letter Live, way up in the Exchange Tower, which is the home of the TSC in downtown Toronto. And all year long, James not only brings all the biggest names in the cannabis space here, he actually goes to them. He kicked off this year with a visit to CannTrust's growing operation in Vaughan.
It's all about yield. It's all about productivity. We are at the pinnacle of automation. We look for new technology every single day.
This is called the F80 Polycaps capsule filling machine, and what we do is fill capsules with cannabis oil. So in our tablets, we're doing 3 varieties, our 1-to-1, our THC, and our CBD. I think this makes it more accessible to patients all around. It's more understandable as a pharmaceutical or medical product, and easier for doctors to prescribe instead of saying a couple puffs of a joint.
Right. Late last winter, James hit the road for Gatineau, Quebec, where Hydropothecary was setting up to focus primarily on recreational cannabis.
Here we have a 22,000 square foot flowering bay in which we operate a continuous grow cycle. So what that means is we harvest every 10 days and our customers always have access to top quality fresh marijuana. There's a whole ton of lighting and electricity that goes into marijuana production. The largest inputs between electricity, water, and labor are all cheaper in Quebec. So it gives us a really nice insulated cost advantage, which has been one of the reasons we've been able to achieve 89 cents per gram production cost.
One of the things I've noticed is that you seem to have pretty much the highest gutter heights of any greenhouse operation I've seen yet.
So every foot of height on a large facility as this represents thousands of cubic feet of air. It allows us to dial in environmental controls that much more for much less energy expenditure. All the greenhouse production facilities at Hydropothecary were custom built for cannabis. There's no retrofit here.
At Green Relief in Pestilence, Ontario, James got a look at the aquaponics growing system, which was a little fishy.
Aquaponics is the most sustainable form of agriculture known in the world today. The roots in the system that are in the water suck the nitrates and clean the water for the fish, going right back to the fish tanks from the beds. It's a symbiotic relationship between fish, water, plants. Just like any freshwater lake you've ever paddled through in a canoe, see a lily pad growing, a bulrush is being fed the same way. It's by the fish that are in that lake. From the time we take a cutting to the time we harvest and start drying is 8 weeks. Wow. 6.7 harvests per year. We're getting about 30% more product annually than any other method of growing. We still get the same nitrate, phosphorus, potassium, micro, macronutrients, and actually more heterotropic and aerobic bacteria action than most of the other systems do in this natural closed loop system. So we actually have more benefit from feeding them converted fish manure than a commercially fertilized scenario.
In May, the Kronos Group invited James to Stayner, Ontario. That's where they've taken a barn and some land and created a bustling production facility.
Fund where we looked at everything and anything, and we saw Peace Naturals as key. The largest land package of any of the licensed producers, access to free on-site water, methane cogeneration, phase 3 power, so it was a huge advantage. This was the first facility to get licensed under the MMPR. It's exciting to see what we've done with this and where we've gone since. You can hear the extraction machines working away. We have extraction machines working 24/7. We can actually control them from the phone. We wanted to make sure everything was easy for people to join the company. So you've got Building 1, Building 2, Building 3, very creative names, Building 4. So welcome to Peace Naturals. As a licensed producer, we don't want patients to come to us for medicine because it's legal. We want them to come to us because of the quality. Quality is the #1 priority. This is a proprietary strain we have called Infinity. This is a very high THC strain, and that's quite popular in Germany right now. If we were to allocate all of our supply to Germany, it still wouldn't scratch the surface. But for us, it's a balance. We're a Canadian-based company, and we want to take care of Canadian demand first. And you can see this is still a few weeks, from maturing. The leaves haven't got to the point where you start seeing color adding in during flush. But that's the quality and the care you put in each plant to be able to have something that's differentiated.
Then it was off to Khiron Life Sciences in beautiful Bogota, Colombia, a country which is working hard to become a leader in the cannabis space.
The way that I view the Colombian market is it's really like kind of rewinding 5 years ago where we were in Canada at that point, an emerging opportunity that is, very much been untapped. 620 million people living in Latin America, 60 million of those people potentially candidates for treatment of conditions with medical cannabis. That's twice the population of Canada. As one of the first licensees, one of the first to receive quota, we're really tip of the spear.
So we're planning all the operations, we're planning all the financing, we are planning on the symposium for tomorrow to start telling all the doctors, all the patients that Khiron is coming.
This is the first symposium on medical cannabis in Colombia. To present them with the justification from a physiologic, from a medical, from a safety, from an efficacy perspective as to why cannabis-based medicines may be a viable option for some of their patients.
So my role as Chief Compliance Officer here is to bring the same level of compliance that DEA mandates to the pharmaceutical industry. I was previously the Chief of Pharmaceutical Investigations for DEA. I was a special agent with the DEA for 26 years. So to take that level of compliance and apply it here brings instant credibility and legitimacy to this industry.
So at this point in time, it seems Colombia is now in the lead in many respects, especially medically. Is that one of the opportunities that you are seeking to capture for Colombia?
Yes, one of the themes that we wanted to develop in Colombia is scientific research. And that scientific research has to be done with the doctors.
We consider ourselves a bit of a family around here, so it was a real pleasure to head down to a family business of patients and growers in Kitchener, Ontario, and actually learn a few things.
You grow here aeroponically as opposed to hydroponically or conventionally. What's the difference between aeroponics, hydroponics, and growing in dirt?
We eliminate any potential intermediary and provide our nutrition in the form of liquid nutrients directly to the root mass of the plant using a special type of mister spray that allows the plant to optimally absorb the nutrients that we provide. There's no chemistry involved in soil composition or in substrate monitoring. So we can optimize directly to the conditions that the plant requires. Because of the high efficiency of our system, we use less nutrients. We use, no pesticides. All of these other elements of cost, which also create work and therefore increase the number of employees required to service the plants, are simply not present when you consider aeroponics and the JWC approach.
And as Canadian growers got ready to ship product through official channels prior to legalization, James and the team went to Moncton, New Brunswick to find out how Organigram planned to smoke the competition.
We're here inside glorious and beautiful room 24. What do we got here?
So we're in an Edison room and we're looking at Edison Reserve here.
When you say Edison, what are you talking about? I thought this company was called Organigram.
So we just recently launched our core recreational brand, the Edison Cannabis Company. And within the Edison Cannabis Company, there's a sub-brand called Edison Reserve. So that's the creme de la creme. It's our top buds that get hand manicured and craft cured afterwards.
So this is Edison Reserve.
This and this and this and this.
And the lower buds?
They go to the Edison standard line. They go through a machine trimming process, so more of a mainstream product.
Is it still going to be Organigram that focuses on the medical market?
Exactly. Organigram will be our core medical brand. Always will be.
What are some of the other brands besides Edison that you recently launched?
Yeah, so we've got Anchor Organics, which will be our recreational facing organic brand. And we've also got the Trailer Park Buds. So Trailer Park Buds, we're going to be launching with pre-rolls only across the country.
Oh.
Yeah, so...
those guys can't roll to save their lives.
Convenience. Convenience is what it's all about. We've received some initial guidelines from Health Canada on how recreational packaging could look. Going to be heavily regulated, child resistant. So we've gone ahead and done some initial mock-ups. So you're looking at the Edison Cannabis Company line of packaging. You'll notice there's the THC symbol that has to be on all packaging. The logo can be no bigger than this standardized THC symbol. The Edison Cannabis Company was our decision to create a brand focused on innovation, focused on product, and as we move forward with expanded product lines, such as vaporizers and edibles, definitely the Edison brand positions us well for future innovations.
So at Organigram, when you put all that together, I think it's a combination that's unseen in Canada in today's marketplace.
A trip to New York gave James the exclusive opportunity to interview the former president of Mexico, who's now a representative of Khiron, and here's what he had to say.
So you were formerly the head of Coca-Cola, the president of Coca-Cola Latin America. And to what extent do you envision using lessons from your time as the head of Coca-Cola Latin America to bring to bear on Khiron to help them succeed in the Latin American marketplace?
Well, you know, I'm 76 now, and I joined the Coca-Cola company when I was 18. So almost 68 years ago. Marketing is the same. It's the same. As you produce, you have somebody to consume, but now the tortilla has been turned around. Now you tell me what you want me to produce, I produce it and I give it to you.
And just this month, James was able to ditch the Canadian winter, head to sunny Florida, and visit one of Liberty Health Sciences' facilities.
The most interesting thing about Florida is we control the entire seed to sale. So we control everything from the production of our product all the way to the dispensaries, and we're permitted to open up to 30 dispensaries in Florida. This is our room that we have all of our mothers. We've since retrofitted all the facilities up to our standards. We've also seen an output upgrade of upwards of 40%. So come along and I'll show you some of our plants. Within this room, we have 3 separate strains. We also have other green rooms that have other genetic profiles. One of the benefits of being in Florida is just really maximizing the potential of the sun. So we really have some of the lowest electricity rates out of any other greenhouse that we've seen. This is our processing facility. What we produce in here are products for Mary's medicinals as well as packs. We have an exclusivity within Florida. So we produce everything from transdermals to ointments to vaporization pens. Try to offer as many options as we can.
What a great year it's been. Who knows where 2019 will take James and the team. For Midas Letter Live, I'm Liz West.
Well, thank you, Liz West, for that video, and you're working hard, traveling all over the place, out in the field, as they say. Okay, well, look, we got our NDI working, Ben, and I think a picture tells 1,000 words. So I'm going to put up a couple charts. Maybe we can comment about some of the things. I'm going to start with the Standard & Poor's, which is a pretty broad index. And give me 1 second. I should have had this ready, and I didn't. So here we go. Down 39 points, and let me just. Oh yeah, there it is. So. Okay, so look, this is when earlier I thought there was a possibility. Oh, I'm going to forget about that. But look at we had that, then we broke it here, and look at those red candles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and yesterday we had a much bigger wick than tail, and we had a follow through. I'm kind of hoping that because we have a much bigger tail than wick, maybe we get a little bounce back. I don't see a change in direction anywhere soon. I don't see evidence of that yet, but you never know. I mean, the RSI is got to be getting in really oversold territory. But things can remain oversold a lot longer and you can remain solvent.
That's right. Yeah, the one discouraging thing I'm looking at in that chart is that the volume. The volume, I believe, at least on SPY, right, the ETF that shadows the S&P 500 index, that is at the second largest volume today to the downside. So that's above, say, the 30 period moving average, which I use, way above it.
Right.
And we've had 2 consecutive days. So like the third or the second and the fourth strongest selling day of the year in SPY.
Today.
Today, I believe, was the second, and yesterday was the fourth. So we're looking at, it's not just going down on middling volume; it's going down on very heavy volume.
Sure, but can that continue? Well, in your experience, when you see like the second and fourth, would you say, hey, we're probably is this exhaustion selling, or is this $1 million question, right?
It's hard to say because we're right in the middle of it. But I mean, what I would say is I wouldn't be, if I was position trading or swing trading for a few days, or even looking for long-term in stake holding to put a stake in long-term. I would wait until I see some sort of base building in place, like a higher low take place, maybe volume come off a little bit, and at least on the hourly, see some higher lows. Perhaps higher time frames. This is a pretty dangerous time right now. You could get run over with another day, down, 40 points on the S&P tomorrow, 500 points on the Dow, if you don't be careful, because I don't see that evidence yet.
Right.
Before going in long, you want to base build. Same thing with weed stocks, I think. You want to see some base building, some positive base building, and then maybe, the tax law selling, maybe get that out of the way, which I believe is the 27th is the last day, and then see what happens in the new quarter. So,
okay, I'm going to go to a specific company here, one that's been in the news, and that company is Tilray, and that company had a very good day.
Yeah, very strong day today.
But it's amazing how, I guess with this
oh, your scaling's a little off there, right?
Yeah, the scaling's off. That's the problem. Let me put up another. No, I'm going to go back with 6 months. Because you can't. Let's go with 1 month. There we go. There we go. So here we are. Tilray made some announcements. A few days ago, James West and I were talking about, this candle here looked like outside the band, and then we got a further erosion substantially. RSI got way down, and then they came out with some news with a pharmaceutical giant, and that had a pretty good day. Then we had another red candle, but then it doesn't look like a lot, but it has moved from about $65, $64, all the way up to $81 in a very very short time. But that's been one of the bright lights that I know of.
Now the question is, it's all about context, right? How bright of a light is it? Because in context of the move, it went down $40 previous to that over a 2-week period. So it's all about context, and it had 2 pieces of really good CPG news. In my opinion, maybe lacking on some details, which it perhaps could have propelled it a little bit more. But still, I mean, you're talking about Novartis world distribution agreement, and you're talking about InBev. So lacking a little bit of details, but that's a huge piece of news. So is a $15 move off the low, is that a really strong move, or in the context of the bounce and considering how much it was oversold, is it actually not that great?
It again depends on your point of reference, right? Because if you were fortunate to buy it on the issue, I think the issue price was $17. I think the low trade in the first few days of trading was around 20 and change.
Yep.
And there was a lot of move before it started its epic move to I don't even count the 300 as sort of being real, because it was just a few trades up there.
No, it was a high frequency algorithmic squeeze. It wasn't really a real thing. I mean, it's not a $30 billion company at this point, but yeah. I mean, and your point is taken. You're providing the ultimate context, which when it IPO'd in the summer, it was at $17. It's still a 4 times move. From
and look, so that this $15 move is basically the issue price move, which is instead of a 5 times your money, now it's a 6 times your money kind of thing, or something like that.
Yeah.
Contrast that with some of the last deals that we saw go public at $25, and they're now trading at $16. I think Acreage might be one.
What is Acreage trading at? I think it hit $13 yesterday. No, in the 13s.
I'm gonna. I hope I can get this thing. ACRG.U, and that is on the CNX, right?
Correct. Yeah, 1280. I have.
Yeah, there you go. And I think that issue price was $25.
It was. It trades in U.S. funds, I believe, on the CNX.
Yeah. So there's one that's been cut in half.
Yeah.
And maybe you know what?
It just goes to show everything's getting through the wood chipper right now. Just about everything, except for Khiron, that is. And we have to give kudos to Khiron Life Sciences for having probably the strongest chart out there right now, or one of them anyway.
I'm going to put up the gold ETF, the big one in the U.S., as our final, and look at this. It's I'll just, here, let me,
Yep.
Okay, so again, we've had a steady move in gold. Now I think gold is around, over 1,260 in the actual front month. But there's a candle. Now that candle could be a top, short-term top, which I think would maybe make the market, like these things are contra. This is moving contra to the market. So maybe if gold can back off a bit here, maybe the market gets a reprieve. Anyway, tomorrow Dmitry Zaitsev's going to be here, and we're going to also have the best of the year's Midas features. Ben's going to be back. I'm Ed Milewski. So long from Midas Letter Live.